My name is Tyler, and I'm not exactly what you'd call a horror fan. I can handle a slasher or two, sure, but those old cult classics? The grainy VHS tapes you find in cardboard boxes at thrift stores? Those always felt too real, too raw. But when you're 23, living alone in a rented duplex in a dead-end town, sometimes you do stupid things to feel something. It was a rainy Tuesday night when I found the tape. I'd just broken up with my girlfriend, Liz, 3 days prior. She said I never knew how to be present, that I was drifting through my own life like I was watching it from the outside. Maybe she was right. Maybe that's why I picked up that tape, because it looked like someone else's nightmare, not mine. I was at this tiny pawn shop 2 streets over. It always smelled like old books and cigarette smoke. The guy who runs it, Marty, is one of those guys who doesn't care what you buy as long as you don't ask questions. He was busy arguing with some kid about a busted Walkman when I spotted the dusty black VHS on the bottom shelf. It didn't have a cover, just a white label on the spine. One word, handwritten in red marker, Bloom. No price tag. I held it up to Marty. He just shrugged. $2. I paid in coins and left. The rain had gotten worse by then, hammering the cracked sidewalk. Maybe I should have known right then. Things like this don't come cheap because they shouldn't come at all. My old TV didn't even have a VCR, so I went back into the attic to dig out the one my dad left behind when he moved to Florida. It still worked, though the tracking lines flickered like angry ghosts. I set it up in the living room. The whole place smelled damp, that stale wet smell old carpets get when you forget to vacuum. When I pressed play, the tape didn't even have the usual FBI warning or title screen. It cut straight to a scene of a farmhouse at dusk. The colors were washed out, like an old Polaroid left in the sun too long. There was no music, just the sound of cicadas screaming in the trees. A woman in a white dress stood in the field behind the farmhouse. Her back was to the camera. I remember thinking the shot felt too steady to be handheld, but too shaky to be professional. She didn't move. The camera didn't move. Just a single, static shot that went on for what felt like forever. Then, the frame jittered, and a new scene appeared. Interior. Same house, probably. A man stood in a hallway, staring at a door covered in thick chains and padlocks. He looked straight at the camera, at me, and whispered something, but the audio was so garbled I couldn't make it out. He reached for the door, hands trembling, but never touched it. The film cut to static. I don't know why I kept watching. Maybe it was because every time I thought I'd seen the worst of it, it found new ways to be unsettling. There was a scene of a basement, flooded, water up to the cameraman's knees, with pale shapes drifting just below the surface. I swore I saw an arm, then maybe a face, then nothing. There were no credits. No title card. No final scare to wrap it up in a neat bow. It just ended mid-scene, the man screaming behind the chained door, the sound warping until it was like a dying animal. The screen went black. The VCR clicked. That was it. I turned on every light in the duplex. I even left the bathroom door open. It was just a movie, right? Some lost student film. A piece of cheap underground horror made to shock people like me. I told myself that all the way up to my bed. I dreamed about the woman in the field. This time, she turned around. She didn't have a face. Her skin was smooth and pale, like wax paper stretched tight over bone. No eyes, no nose, just a slit where her mouth should be, stitched shut with black thread. She raised one hand, pointing at me. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. I woke up gasping, nails digging into my palms so hard they drew blood. When I went downstairs the next morning, the tape was still sitting on top of the VCR. Part of me wanted to smash it, to throw it in the trash or toss it in the creek behind my building. But curiosity does something to you. It makes you stupid. I rewound it, hoping maybe the daylight would make it less terrifying. Maybe I'd see the wires, the bad makeup, the cheap tricks. I hit play. The farmhouse appeared again. The field. The cicadas. But this time, the woman was facing the camera. Her stitched mouth smiled. And behind her, something was moving in the corn. Something that hadn't been there last night. That's when I knew the movie had changed. I ejected the tape and checked the label. Same word, Bloom. Same cheap sticker, curling at the edges. Same plastic case, now warm to the touch, like a heartbeat pulsing against my palm. I called Marty at the pawn shop. He didn't pick up. When I walked over there, the place was closed. A handwritten sign taped to the glass door said, "Back in 5 minutes." It stayed that way all day. I sat on my couch, staring at the tape. I could have left it alone. I could have pretended I never found it. But instead, I picked up my phone, typed Bloom VHS horror movie into Google, and hit search. No results. Not a single mention. It was like the film didn't exist at all. By the time the rain came back that night, I decided to watch it again. Just once more. I needed to know if the ending would change again. That was my first real mistake. I told myself it was just morbid curiosity. Just another freaky urban legend waiting to happen. But there was something else to a pull. Like the tape wasn't finished with me yet. Like it was waiting. The second time, I set my phone up to record the TV. I thought, maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I just dreamed that new scene. If I had proof, maybe I could show Liz, prove I wasn't losing my mind. I dimmed the lights, sat cross-legged on the floor, and pressed play. It opened the same way. The farmhouse. The woman in the field, but now she was closer, maybe 10 feet from the camera. Her hands were clasped in front of her like she was praying. I leaned in. In the soft flicker of the TV, I thought I saw her fingers moving, like she was stitching something invisible together. Then, a jump cut. The man in the hallway again, standing before that chained door. But now, scrawled across the wall behind him, was something I hadn't seen before. Do not watch alone. The words looked like they'd been scratched in with broken glass. The man didn't speak this time. He just pressed his ear to the door. On the other side, I heard something like wet breathing, like lungs drowning in their own blood. I grabbed my phone, eyes wide. The timer was still counting. It was recording. Good. I wasn't hallucinating this. The scenes bled into each other, more disjointed than before. The flooded basement returned, but now the water was up to the camera's chest. A pale shape drifted by, this time unmistakably human. Its eyes opened under the surface. I swear it looked straight at me. I checked my phone every few minutes. Red light still blinking. I was capturing this. The final scene made me sick. The camera drifted back to the farmhouse. Night now. The woman was gone. In her place was a child, barefoot, filthy, skin so pale it glowed in the moonlight. He looked about 6 or 7. He lifted his head, and he had no eyes. He mouthed something. No sound came out. Then the screen turned to static, a high-pitched whining that made my teeth hurt. The tape ejected itself. I jumped like it had bitten me. I let out a nervous laugh, just to hear my own voice. I picked up my phone, hands clammy, and hit play. Nothing. Just an hour of black screen. Not even audio. I scrubbed through the footage, back and forth. The file size was huge, but the image was blank, like the camera had recorded a void. But that wasn't possible. I'd seen it. I'd watched it through the lens. I should have had something. My phone screen went dark. When it lit back up, the battery was at 1%. I hadn't even unplugged it from the wall charger. That night I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the floorboards made me jump. I thought I heard a child's voice whispering in the hallway. I checked 3 times, no one there. At dawn, I cracked and called Liz. I don't know what I wanted her to say. Maybe that I'd lost it. Maybe that she'd come over and watch it with me, like we used to on our laziest days. She answered on the 4th ring, groggy. Tyler? It's 6 a.m. What the hell? I didn't know how to start. Do you remember that old VCR? The one my dad left me? Silence. Then, Tyler, what's going on? I told her about the pawn shop, the tape, the scenes that changed. I could hear her breathing on the other end, like she was waiting for the punchline. Just throw it out, she said finally. It's a movie. You're working yourself up over nothing. It's not nothing, I snapped. Then, softer. Please. Will you come see for yourself? More silence. Then she sighed. Fine. Tonight. I'll come over after work. You better have coffee. I promised I would. I'd never been so relieved to hear her voice. She showed up around 10, still wearing her work uniform, faded jeans, a black polo with a diner logo over the heart. She looked tired but curious. Liz had always liked weird shit. She was the one who'd made me watch the Blair Witch Project when we first started dating. She once said there's comfort in knowing you can always turn the TV off when it gets too much. We sat on the floor again, just like old times. I put the tape in. My hands were shaking so bad she noticed. Relax, she said. It's just a movie. I almost believed her. It started like before. Farmhouse, field, woman. But this time, Liz squeezed my hand. Wait. Did you see that? She said. She pointed at the corner of the screen. I squinted. Just barely. Behind the woman, a figure darted through the tall grass. So quick you'd miss it if you blinked. That was not there the first time, I whispered. The scene shifted. The hallway door. The man again. The scratches on the wall looked fresher, deeper, like they'd been carved while we watched. The audio popped, a low growl, words in reverse. Liz recoiled. Turn it up, she said. I did. We leaned in. The man pressed his face to the door, listening. Suddenly, the chains rattled violently. Liz gasped. The camera dropped to the floor, sideways, capturing a glimpse of something black oozing from under the door. Then black screen. The VCR ejected the tape again. We sat in silence. The rain had started up outside, tapping the windows like tiny fingers. "That's messed up," Liz said finally. She looked pale. "It's like it knows we're watching." "Look at my phone." I handed it to her. I'd recorded again. Same thing, blank file, no video, huge file size. She scrolled through, her brow furrowed. "This isn't normal. You said the pawn shop guy knew what it was." I shook my head. "He didn't say a word. And now the shop's been locked up for days." She stood up, pacing. "We need to get rid of it, Tyler. Smash it. Burn it. And if that just makes it worse?" She stopped, looking at me like I'd grown another head. "What, you think it's haunted? It's a piece of plastic." But we both knew it wasn't just that. Not anymore. Liz stayed over that night, mostly because I begged. We left the tape on the kitchen counter, wrapped in an old towel like it was diseased. Around 3 a.m., I woke to a faint static sound. I thought the TV had turned itself on, but when I crept into the living room, it was dark. The VCR, though, the power light was blinking, like it was trying to breathe. I leaned in. My reflection in the TV screen looked wrong, like it was smiling when I wasn't. That was the last straw. At dawn, Liz and I packed the tape in a shoebox, duct taped it shut, and drove out to the old quarry on the edge of town. We stood at the edge, the early morning mist curling around our ankles. I don't know what I expected, maybe the box to move, to scream, to beg. But it just sat there, heavy and silent. Liz looked at me one last time. "You ready?" she asked. I nodded. Together, we hurled the box into the quarry's black water. It sank without a sound. We watched until the ripples disappeared. I thought it was over. God, I wish it had been. For 3 days after we dumped the tape, life felt almost normal. Liz stayed over most nights, though we didn't talk about what we'd seen. It was like we made an unspoken pact, pretend it never happened, and maybe it would stop happening. I started sleeping again. I went back to work at the hardware store, even called my dad for the first time in months, small things to remind myself I was still real. Liz kept trying to get me to go out with her friends, but I couldn't do it. Every time I closed my eyes, I pictured that stitched mouth, that black door rattling behind the chains. On the 4th day, I woke up to a soft tapping at the front door. Sunlight was just starting to bleed through the curtains. Liz was still asleep, her arm draped across my chest. I held my breath, listening. Tap, tap, tap. It was too slow, too deliberate to be the wind. I slipped out of bed, careful not to wake her. The hallway was cold under my bare feet. I peeked through the peephole, and for a second, my brain refused to process what I was seeing. There, leaning against the railing, was the same black shoebox we'd thrown into the quarry. The duct tape was still there, but it looked bloated, like the box had been soaking in water for days. A faint wet spot had formed under it, dripping through the cracks onto the doormat. I unlocked the door and stepped out, heart pounding. The box was vibrating, just enough to make a soft rattling noise. I wanted to run. Instead, I reached out and peeled the soggy tape away. The cardboard caved in, and the VHS tape inside slid out, wrapped in weeds and strands of black hair. I heard Liz behind me. "Tyler? What the hell is that?" I turned to answer, but then I saw something in the corner of my vision, a shape standing at the end of the driveway. It was the woman from the field, still faceless, her stitched mouth open just enough to weep dark fluid onto her dress. She lifted one hand and pointed at the tape. When I blinked, she was gone. Liz begged me to call the police. But what was I supposed to say? "Hi, officer, there's a ghost delivering cursed movies to my house?" Instead, I did the only thing I could think of. I smashed the tape with a hammer in the garage until the plastic split into a dozen jagged pieces. We threw them in separate garbage bags and drove around town, dropping each bag in a different dumpster. We even joked about it, like Horcruxes, Liz said, trying to make me laugh. It almost worked. We didn't talk about it again that night. Liz fell asleep on the couch watching reruns. I stayed up, scrolling through my phone, half expecting to find some news story about cursed tapes or a pawn shop burning down. Nothing. Just the same endless feed of other people's lives. Around 2 in the morning, I nodded off. That's when the dream came back. I was standing in the flooded basement. The water was ice cold, lapping at my chest. The pale shapes floated around me, eyeless, mouthing words I couldn't hear. In the far corner, the chained door was back. The man was gone, but now I could hear a child sobbing from behind it. The chains fell away, clinking into the water like silver snakes. The door creaked open, but instead of darkness, I saw the farmhouse hallway, stretching on forever. The woman stood there, holding the VHS tape out to me with bloodless fingers. Her stitched mouth moved as if whispering a single word over and over. Watch. I woke up screaming, drenched in sweat. Liz jolted awake beside me, eyes wide. I wanted to tell her about the dream, but then I saw what was resting on the coffee table. The tape. Whole again. Perfectly intact. That was when Liz said she was leaving. Not forever, she promised. Just for a few days. She needed air. Space. She said she loved me, but she wasn't going to let this obsession pull her under too. I didn't blame her. I wanted to leave too. But every time I thought about driving away, my mind flickered back to the woman in the field. The door. The faceless child. It felt like if I ran, the movie would find me anyway, like it already had my fingerprints on every frame. So I stayed. I worked up the nerve to go back to the pawn shop, but when I got there, the windows were boarded up. A sign was spray-painted across the plywood, closed for good. No sign of Marty, no forwarding address. Just a single faded poster in the window for some horror festival that never happened. The only person left who might know something was my neighbor, Mr. Collins. He was an old guy, probably in his 70s, always sitting on his porch chain-smoking. He'd lived in the duplex next to mine for 30 years. He'd seen everything that came through this street. Maybe he'd seen who left the box, or worse, who wanted me to have it. When I asked him, he just looked at me with these watery blue eyes, the cigarette trembling between his fingers. That tape, he rasped. Son, you shouldn't be watching things you can't unsee. I wanted to press him, but his hands started to shake so bad he dropped his lighter. He waved me away like I was some door-to-door preacher. Before he went inside, he said one last thing. It's not the movie that changes. It's you. Then he slammed the door. That night, I caved. I couldn't help myself. I sat on the floor, knees pulled up to my chest, and held the tape like it was some sacred relic. My fingers traced the word Bloom on the label, now smudged and faded. When I slid it into the VCR, it didn't start right away. Just static. I thought maybe it was finally dead. But then the farmhouse flickered into view. The woman wasn't in the field this time. The camera moved on its own, creeping through the rows of corn, pushing aside the stalks like fingers brushing hair. I felt sick, but I couldn't look away. Finally, it came to a clearing. There, kneeling in the dirt, was me. Not just someone who looked like me, it was me, wearing the same t-shirt I had on right then. In the static haze, I watched myself lift my head, eyes hollow and black. I mouthed something. Watch. Then the screen went black, and the VCR ate the tape. The TV switched itself off. I was alone, staring at my reflection in the dead screen, my heart pounding so loud I thought it would break my ribs. That's when the knock came at the door again. 3 soft taps. I stood frozen in the hallway, staring at the front door like it might burst open any second. 3 soft knocks, then silence. It could have been the wind, a prank, anything normal. But normal was a foreign language to me now. My hand trembled as I reached for the knob, the cold brass biting my palm. When I pulled the door open, no one was there. Just the pale glow of the streetlight spilling across my porch. The box was gone this time. No soggy cardboard, no reassembled tape. But something else caught my eye. A trail of muddy footprints leading away from my door and down the cracked sidewalk. Bare feet. Small, like a child's. I shut the door and locked it. Then I locked it again. And I did something I hadn't done since I was a kid afraid of monsters under the bed. I dragged the old armchair across the hallway and wedged it against the door. Like that would matter. I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the clearing in the corn, my own hollow-eyed face mouthing that single word, watch. I started to wonder if I'd always been here, sitting in this duplex, the VCR humming like a trapped insect in the dark. Maybe the rest of my life, my job, Liz, even my own memories, were just spliced frames, illusions stuck to the film. By dawn, my living room looked like a conspiracy theorist bunker. I'd pinned Polaroids to the walls, shots I'd taken of the TV screen when the tape played. Some came out normal. Others were black squares or blurry streaks of color. A few showed things I hadn't even seen in the film, the woman's stitched mouth wide open, shapes standing in doorways behind the chain door, eyes peering out of the flooded basement. I didn't remember taking those photos. But they were there, held to the wallpaper with rusty thumbtacks. A timeline of my own unraveling. By noon, I cracked. I called Liz again. Voicemail. I tried 5 times before she finally picked up, her voice tight with exhaustion. Tyler? You can't keep doing this. It's back, I whispered. The tape, it came back again. It showed me things, Liz. Things that aren't supposed to be there. Did you watch it again? She snapped. I couldn't answer. That was enough. I can't help you if you won't help yourself. I love you, but you need to get rid of it. For real this time. Before I could beg her to come over, she hung up. And this time, I knew she wouldn't answer if I called again. I sat there for hours, watching the static on the TV. It felt safer than turning it off, like the blanket was the only thing keeping whatever was inside the tape from bleeding out into my living room. At some point, I must have dozed off. I dreamed I was back in the flooded basement. The water was up to my chin. Shapes circled me in the dark, faceless children whispering my name. A door drifted past, half-rotten, chains clinking like wind chimes. When I woke up, I was sitting cross-legged in front of the TV, the tape clutched in my hands. I had no memory of getting it out. No memory of rewinding it. My thumb hovered over the play button. The phone rang, jolting me out of my trance. It was Liz's number. Relief washed over me so fast I almost cried. Liz. I answered, voice cracking. But the voice on the other end wasn't hers. It was muffled, like someone talking through a mouthful of water. Words twisted backward, echoing in my ear until I had to hold the phone away. Then a single, clear whisper, watch. The line went dead. I tried to call her back. Straight to voicemail. I checked my call log. There was no record of her number ever calling. That was when I heard the TV. It had turned itself on. The farmhouse again, this time. The camera pushed through the front door like it was alive, like it was dragging me inside. I saw the hallway, the peeling wallpaper, the rotting carpet. At the end of the hall, the chained door pulsed in the darkness. I pressed my palms against the screen. My reflection stared back at me, my eyes black, hollow pits. My mouth stitched shut. Behind me, in the reflection, the woman stood in the corner of my living room, watching. I spun around, no one there. I grabbed the remote, smashing buttons until the TV flickered off. The VCR word, the tape ejecting itself like it was done with me for now. I dropped it on the coffee table and stumbled back. My chest hurt, like something inside me was pulling tight. I needed answers. I needed someone who'd believe me. So I did the stupidest thing I could. I drove back to the quarry. The sky was bruised purple by the time I got there, the last light bleeding behind the tree line. The quarry looked the same, a black pit surrounded by rusted fences and abandoned machinery. I sat on the hood of my car, the tape in my lap. I kept waiting for someone, the woman, the child, my own reflection, to crawl out of the woods. But the night stayed still. Then I saw headlights coming up the access road. An old pickup truck rattled to a stop beside me. I shielded my eyes as the driver's door opened. It was Marty, the pawn shop guy. He looked worse than I remembered, thinner, pale, eyes sunken like bruises. I figured you'd end up here, he said, voice scratchy like a busted radio. You sold me this, I hissed. What is it? He didn't answer right away. He looked at the tape like it was a loaded gun. I didn't sell you anything, he said finally. You bought it. There's a difference. What does it want from me? He took a shaky breath. It wants an ending. Always does. Marty told me he'd found the tape in a storage unit, buried in a box with old horror reels and blank cassettes. He said he watched it once, just once. Said he'd seen his own death at the bottom of that flooded basement, eyes wide open underwater. He tried to get rid of it, just like me. Burned it. Drowned it. Smashed it. But it always came back. You can't destroy it, he rasped. You can only pass it on. My mouth went dry. Pass it on? You mean, give it to someone else? He nodded. You watched it alone. That's the worst thing you can do. It gets inside you. The only way to finish it is to finish watching, and then find someone else to take it. I looked at the tape in my hands, the plastic warm against my skin. Does it ever end? Marty laughed, a wet, broken sound. You think I'd be here if it did? He turned and walked back to his truck, engine coughing to life. The taillights disappeared down the access road, leaving me alone with the moon and the VHS that wouldn't die. I drove home on autopilot, the tape riding shotgun like an unwanted passenger. My phone buzzed the whole way, voicemails, text alerts, garbled static. Each time I looked, the same word flashed on the cracked screen. Watch. When I pulled into my driveway, I saw Liz's car parked out front. Relief and dread tangled in my gut. She was waiting for me in the living room, arms crossed tight against her chest. I could see she'd been crying. Tyler. I was so scared, she whispered. I kept seeing things. In my dreams. In the mirrors. I don't know what's happening to us. I held up the tape. She flinched like it was a snake. We have to finish it, I said. My voice sounded like someone else's. Together. She hesitated. Then she nodded. And for the first time in days, I felt a flicker of hope, twisted, fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, this time the movie would give us an ending that stayed put. We sat on the floor, just like before. I pushed the tape into the VCR. Liz and I sat cross-legged on the living room floor like kids at a sleepover, but there was no warmth left in it. Just two people clutching each other in the glow of the TV, pretending the rest of the world didn't exist. The tape slid into the VCR with that now familiar click. The TV screen went black for a heartbeat, then the static rolled in, hissing like something alive in the wires. Liz's hand found mine. Her palm was cold, fingers trembling. "We stop at this time," she whispered. I nodded, though I didn't believe it. Not really. The farmhouse appeared again, but it looked different, rotten somehow. The porch sagged, the paint peeled away like dead skin. The cicadas were gone, replaced by a low hum, almost like chanting. The camera drifted forward on its own, pushing through the front door. I held my breath as we entered the hallway. The wallpaper seemed to twitch, patterns warping in and out like it was breathing. The chains on the door at the end of the hall were gone. The door itself was wide open, blackness bleeding out of it like oil. Liz squeezed my hand harder. "What's behind it?" she asked, her voice cracking. I didn't answer, because I already knew. The camera moved through the hallway, step by step, into the darkness beyond the door. The hum grew louder, turning into a chorus of wet whispers. The basement again flooded, but this time the water was red, swirling around something pale that bobbed to the surface. It was the man, the one from the hallway. His eyes were stitched shut now, mouth agape in a frozen scream. Liz gasped, pulling her knees up to her chest. The camera drifted past him, deeper into the water, until the screen filled with darkness. I leaned forward, almost pressing my face against the glass. Then, in the distance, the faintest flicker of light. The camera rushed toward it, faster than before, the water churning in impossible ways. I felt my ears pop, like we were sinking below the world. The light resolved into a clearing. The cornfield. The faceless woman stood there, waiting, but this time, she wasn't alone. Behind her, a crowd had gathered, copies of us. Dozens of Liz and me, some with hollow eyes, some stitched mouths, all watching the screen like they were waiting for a punchline. One of the Lizzies stepped forward. She tilted her head, mouth hanging slack. Then, in a voice that sounded like every nightmare I'd ever had, she whispered, "Watch." Liz beside me jerked back, nearly ripping my hand away. "Tyler, turn it off." "Now," she shouted. I lunged for the remote, but it slipped from my fingers, clattering under the coffee table. I scrambled after it, fingers grasping at empty space, but when I looked up, the screen had changed again. Now the camera was in my living room. The same furniture, the same threadbare rug, the same open VCR slot, but empty. Liz and I weren't there. No, we were inside the screen. I saw myself on the TV, standing at the front door. I was looking through the peephole, just like that first night. I watched my own mouth move, silently counting the knocks. Liz sobbed beside me, burying her face in her hands. "It's copying us," she cried. "It's copying everything." The image flickered. The camera pulled back, and now I saw the shoebox on the porch again. The tape, whole and clean. It was like watching a movie inside a movie, frame bleeding into frame. I grabbed Liz by the shoulders. "We have to finish it," I said, but the words felt alien in my mouth. She looked at me with tears streaking down her cheeks. "What if it never ends?" The camera on screen turned back to the clearing. The woman in white stood closer now, her stitched mouth split open, threads dangling like wet worms. She raised her arms, and the crowd of our copies parted, revealing a child in the grass, the same eyeless boy from before. He lifted his head toward us. No eyes, but I felt him see straight through me. His lips moved. The screen crackled. Liz whispered it with him, a broken echo. "Watch." The TV made a sound, a low, bone-deep moan that rattled the glass. The basement water surged on screen, slamming into the camera like a wave. The image fractured, frames flickered out of order, the man drowning, the hallway door splitting apart, the woman's faceless head spinning like film off its reel. The screen went black. For a second, I thought it was over. Then, the final scene. It was me. Older, maybe. My hair thinner, my eyes sunken. I was standing in a different living room. Not mine, not ours. Holding the tape out to someone off-screen. My mouth moved, but no sound came out. I didn't have to hear it. I knew what I was saying. "Watch." The picture warped. The camera turned. And now I was the one holding the camcorder, pointing it at the next person. Their face was a smear of static, a blank shape waiting for an identity. The film burned up in the frame, colors bubbling, the screen melting into darkness. The VCR rattled, spitting out the tape. It landed on the rug between Liz and me. We stared at it like it might crawl away. We didn't speak that night. Liz curled up on the couch, refusing to meet my eyes. I sat on the floor until sunrise, the tape in my lap, feeling its warmth seep into my skin like a fever. I knew what Marty meant now. There's no ending, only passing it on, frame by frame. When Liz woke, she didn't say goodbye. She grabbed her keys, her phone, and left without looking back. I didn't follow her. I knew she'd never be back. The house felt wrong without her. Empty, but not alone. The walls hummed like film spinning on a projector, even when the TV was off. I sat there all day, watching the tape. Not playing it, just watching it. Waiting. That night, I heard the knocks again. 3 soft taps on the door. I knew I shouldn't open it. I knew what it would mean. But when I did, the hallway was empty except for a cardboard box. Fresh, clean, sealed tight with duct tape. It was my handwriting on the side this time. Bloom. Inside, the tape waited. Same plastic shell, same faded label. But beside it was something new. A second tape, unmarked. I knew what I had to do. I took out my phone, scrolled through my contacts until I found a name, someone I hadn't seen in years. A cousin, an old classmate, a stranger who still trusted me enough to answer the door. I lifted the tape in my hand. It felt lighter now, or maybe I did. The hum in the walls grew louder, like applause. Tomorrow, I'll knock 3 times. I'll smile through the peephole. And when they ask what's inside, I'll say just one word. Watch.